right, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if Rob, if you want to kind of take it away.
This meeting is being recorded.
Sure. I'm happy to talk about. So the last, I guess, 2 weeks ago, I got involved downtown with the Occupy City Hall protest that was happening, and um, s- did followed through with an effort to set up a mesh node there, which was um, just mostly to support the people who were there who didn't have other means of connecting to the internet. Um, there was some, I think, in the protest space that as sort of in our space, there's some paranoia around being tracked and all of that. And this is public Wi-Fi, so it's comes with its risks. But for a number of people, I mean, there were a lot of people doing things like live streaming what was going on, and there was a lot of action there. There was a couple thousand people there at a number of points, and it was a sort of a standard setup like goes on any other roof in our network with an Omni and a light beam, and we were connecting across the street to an office building that has actually the Manhattan Borough President's office, and so we were running this node. It usually had, I think now it's got probably around 20 people connected. It's still going. I haven't been down there in about a week now because the main organizers left, and now it's kind of turned into I don't want to speak to exactly what's happening there right now because I haven't been there. Although I'm going to stop by tomorrow. But the node is still running. It's running on, we don't have good electricity down there, so it's running on battery power or solar, depending on what's available at the time. Sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, no, there's a bird outside my window making noise. Anyway, so that happened. It's been successful. We got some good press about it. The borough president tweeted about it. She actually mentioned it also in one of her speeches that I was at a couple of days ago. So that's going on with sort of the Occupy that's in our Slack. We've got a Slack channel for it if you're interested. My guess is that it will go away soon because the protest will go away soon, but I'm not totally sure. There's another occupation that's starting because I think we'll see where the protest movements go. But I know there's another thing that's starting now because evictions are starting back up. And so if things are happening in our network area, it's something that we might be able to support. If it's something that's happening outside of our area, it's more challenging. But me and Vlado did also some sort of documentation about how to set it up so that other people could maintain it if there's not a mesh person there. But it's a pretty simple thing to be able to support. So we've been doing that. A different thing that happened in the last month, we've been working on submitting things to NYCHA for, NYCHA had a request for expressions of interest for use of their buildings to bring residents broadband. And that's something that we've been doing sort of, and so we've submitted proposals to them. I believe we haven't heard back yet, but it turns out that as part of the police budget cut that happened as a result of the protests, among other things, NYCHA has gotten I want to say $87 million for expansion of internet access. So some of this may be funded. It's something that we may be able to collaborate with them on through this proposal or through some other things too. So that's pretty exciting news. And we're still in the process with some other NYCHA stuff that I think it just does take a long time. I'm not sure if I have other updates than that, but I hear a car alarm, so I'm going to close my window.
Yeah. Have you people joined the network at all down at Occupy? Like, do you have any stories or experiences from it?
I think maybe the most interesting thing from sort of a mesh perspective that's a takeaway is that at the end of or the middle of last week when I left, and I ought to check it now again, but checking the totals of uploads and downloads on the sector antenna, which we were the first client off of the sector in the borough president's office, and there was actually more upload than download. It was about, I think, 110 gigabytes to 100 gigabytes, which is, I would say, not very typical for a network connection. And so it's kind of neat if we think about the internet as typically something that's a consumption-oriented activity or a consumption-oriented infrastructure. And this is one where this was a space of generativity. So I was kind of proud of that, just as a participant in the protest, that we're using the internet in sort of a different way. So I kind of liked that. I also, a different sort of takeaway was that sort of about who we serve generally, who uses our network, which is that I set up an Omni to begin with, and it turns out Omnis are only 5 gigahertz antennas. And there were actually a fair number of people present who couldn't see the network because they had devices that were only 2.4 gigahertz. And so then we managed to get a hold of a 2.4 gigahertz device to help with that too. But it's just interesting, I think, in the world of sort of installing new technology all the time, it's easy to forget just how many people are using some of the older stuff. And so it's nice to be able to support that. And a different sort of thing, in that if people are interested in sort of what we did and about sort of future things, my guess with the economy and with the political situation, how it is that there might be more protests in the future that look like this. We used the hardware that we had, but I think that there's potential to use better hardware or something that's more well suited to what we were doing. And that could be just dual band access point, but it could be something that runs smoother off of unreliable power sources, something that's human powered. I'm not sure, there's a number of different directions that could go, but if people are interested, I would encourage you to get on the Slack and join the Occupy Wi-Fi channel because we started discussing that. But I think changing the hardware setup going forward for future things is a project to start thinking about.
That kind of relates to a question I've had over the last few weeks with the speeds on just the general network and whether or not our hardware is really adequate for this increased load on the internet. I mean, so I'm not on the mesh network just because I don't have line of sight in my neighborhood, but even with like when I'm video streaming and then like my roommate is, even with like supposedly 200 megabits per second, it can be really slow. And I'm curious, or we just have, lags or get cut off. I'm just curious from people who are on the network how, especially working from home, has been, if they have been working from home or even not, just more video chatting like we're doing right now. How people's experiences have been on the network, positive, neutral, negative. I mean, feel free to chat. This really doesn't have to be like anyone can just chime in too. It's not. It's kind of. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Hi, this is Steve. I'm obviously a newcomer here, so I apologize for just kind of jumping in. But your question and scenario that you ran into on the 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz, there's actually very little equipment to do something like what you're focused on around mesh that is actually dual bands. To the best of my knowledge, from a larger area network perspective, there's only one device made by MikroTik that supports dual band. And then there is a much smaller, like portable router that's dual band. So otherwise, what I would suggest is to maybe look into something called device-to-device linking. And this lets you run, depending on your software, will allow you to connect say a 5.8 gigahertz radio to a 2.4, and it'll cross-advertise your connectivity across both. And so irregardless if your users have 2.4 or 5.8, as long as you have the appropriate antenna and signal, then you'll be able to have all users see things, because 5.8 is, as it sounds like you've already learned, won't go too far. 2.4 goes further, but then not everyone's still using 2.4. So I don't know, for what it's worth, I could point you to my blog. I have some articles that might be helpful, but I'm excited to just, further listen into what you're doing.
Yeah, if you put a link in the chat, that'd be great.
So, my name is Shay. I put something in the chat also that I was hoping Rob would see. Rob, you should write about the interesting use case of internet as a means of production rather than of consumption at Occupy. That would be, I would read that. I think it would go over a long way.
Yeah.
And I know that Willem is really experienced in helping get stuff out for the blog, or I'm happy to help copy edit.
Yeah, sounds great.
Shay, do you want to chime in about the archive?
Sure. I wasn't super sure who from the archive project would be on this call. Another project that we've had a ton of momentum on recently and some cool press has been the DOT camera archive project that Julian mentioned, which was mentioned in last month's meeting, and since then has grown quite a bit, where Akash, a Mesh member, used his node to support building a tool that would scrape screenshots of the live feeds of DOT traffic cameras. And then he's been storing those on his personal storage. And what you can do is you can access this drive and look at the cross streets, date and time of images from these traffic cams to see if your activities at a protest were on record for them. And the intention is to document police brutality and to give people access to the tools of surveillance that are being used arguably against them. An update on that, we do have a couple of really good groups going on. If you're interested, you can join the hashtag NYC Camera Archive channel. And from there, we have 4 now breakout groups, one on outreach, where we're talking about partnerships and working with community orgs to user test and give feedback. We have Dev, which is working on an overhaul of the archive page itself, which has a new URL, streetwatch.live. And we have infrastructure, which is focusing on the data problem of what to do with 200 gigabytes of data a day. And then we have a new breakout group called Computer Vision, which is a result of some feedback we've gotten from activists and surveillance groups that the information that we're archiving could be used not only for protesters but against protesters in identification and doxing efforts. So and previously this issue had come up in our posts on Reddit and Twitter, and our thought was that, okay, well, the police already have much more sophisticated tools than these. They have entire teams, task force, higher resolution images dedicated towards identifying protesters. But we hadn't really considered the fact that civilians don't have access to that tools, and we're giving that tool to civilians with different intentions than ours. So for the time being, we've made the archive private, and we're focusing on a couple of different strategies to ensure the security of protesters, including a request form and a account management system and and computer vision projects associated with that. So the thought right now, and if you're interested in this project again, you can jump into the Slack or you can just ping me and I'll point you to the right subgroup. Providing low-res anonymized archival footage for like casual users, and if you have a use case, building out a request that would provide higher resolution, non-anonymized imagery with a community behind it where we like know who you are and what you're going for. So you know, some real movement on that. We've had press from Motherboard, Business Insider, Time Out. Basically, all of them are just copying the content that Akash and Willem posted on our blog. But great to see. People seem really excited about it, but we are prioritizing focusing on those security requests, especially as we're working on like a usability overhaul and making, if we're going to make it really easy to use, we want to make sure it's like not going to exacerbate protester safety concerns. So that's our update. If you have questions, I'm going to put this Slack channel that I mentioned in the chat. And the channel that I'm putting in there is the like general project one. And if you go to that channel, there's like a list of the subgroups in there.
And also, if you're not on the Slack, I added an invite link at 7:20 p.m. So you can just hop on that and then you can join our Slack as a member. Where pretty much all of our conversations happen, and there are maybe too many channels, but there's something for everyone pretty much. If not, you can make a channel and find other like-minded people. Brian, did you have some updates too? Are you still on? I saw you. Right? Or is that maybe a different Brian? Okay.
Brian said from an install and can't make it or something.
Oh, okay. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that as we've recently like reopened installations again, and are trying to do it in you know, a mindful way of you know, social distancing and exposure. But you know, a lot of people really need to be connected, so it really is pretty essential. And we are mostly prioritizing people without any internet access. I don't know if that's still in place, but that's been I think I saw like up until last week that was still kind of the priority at least. But if you're interested in installing or like learning how to install and volunteering with that, that would be a really great way to participate and a huge help, and just the most direct and immediate way of you know, building the network is, you know, connecting one household or apartment building at a time. And
where do we put our name for like just like helping along, like helping installs?
Yeah, totally. So we have an install channel on Slack, and then it's on that you can just comment to say that you'd like to join on installs, and then we'll add you to a private channel, which is our install team channel, and that has like just more personal information about scheduling of when these installs are, which is why we have the private one. And from there, if you know it's like Saturday afternoon and you see it, just like hop on the thread and say that you can shadow an install and you can join. And it usually takes about like 3 to 5 installs per person to get trained. So definitely like some things I'm thinking is because like sometimes that 3 to 5 installs can be a little like hard for people to like accomplish. I know that even like myself, it was like I did one install and then like 2 months later another install and 3 months later another install. Like it took me a while to like really solidify my training. So if people have like ideas and thoughts on like maybe how to make that a little more efficient or effective, because I think that like we have a lot of people who would be really interested in installing, and it's just kind of like can be hard to actually make that a reality.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
So is that what you mean when you say install leader?
Yeah.
Because when you started, you said people could be an install leader. I'm not that familiar, but I'm interested, and I understand you guys got some nice technology. So that's what I was thinking about. Another way you could probably help is that not so much as field installation, but have a centralized location, maybe a house or something that you can use, and then people can come there and practice installation and they get a feel of it. But what I wanted to ask is that, does the technology, the antennas, does it have to be at a certain height? Because I saw it in the pole and in the City Hall sort of demonstration, it was on a pole. Does it have like a 2-story height, or can it go up to a 30-story building? Do you need a wider antenna?
Yeah, sure. So it really, I mean, it could be either. It depends on just line of sight. So the antenna that you install on like an apartment building or on a pole or anything has to have a direct physical line of sight to another antenna. We have a website that you can type in addresses to kind of give them a sense of what the strongest node would be. And so it's easier to get a sense on whether or not you have line of sight. And yeah, definitely, but your comment too about the centralized, oh, and one more thing is like, it can be high or low, but I guess like if it's, 20 feet in the air, it's not necessarily going to be easy for other people to connect to it, at least for like their home connection. So we do try to do it on rooftops. I mean, a lot are on like brownstone rooftops. We do have some on top of 30-story buildings and stuff, but it kind of just depends on where is going to be the best connection as well.
Well, I'm thinking about, the application is, I think, ideal in a suburban area, houses and brownstones, maybe 4 or 5 stories. When you get to the urban areas, even though it's on a high floor, you can reach the people on that floor, maybe 2 floors down, but then repeating it down, going down the, floors, I think it's going to be, there has to be a way to do that as well. And when you say line of sight, with trees and buildings, it would have to be on every building or every other building.
I mean, I guess if the entire city was covered, it would generally, as like a rule, it would generally be on every building, just because in order to have a strong enough connection. But one thing you're saying about multiple apartment installs, which we don't do as many as we would like to do, that's definitely been a push. And it's that would usually require wiring the building with the entire building, so it would be less of just a wireless connection kind of extending to every single apartment. But in a brownstone, we can install, like, if there's 4 apartments, we can connect all 4 apartments to a single node. Sorry, I should block the mic.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing? I want to ask you a question. So if the line of sight, it has to be in line of sight, does it make it acceptable to bad weather? How does the weather affect the system?
I mean, other people can feel free to chime in too. It is wireless connectivity, so it always depends on how far you are from the real source. Let's say that. Rain can definitely be a negative impact on the network, and more so if you're further away. So, like people who are in Williamsburg and are connecting to our Supernode 1, over the bridge and everything, and then rain happens, and they might be commenting on our support channel.
Okay.
Need better access. But that's where greater density and not only with just connections to fiber throughout the city, but also just more meshing where, you know, one antenna can hop over to a different one if it's not getting a great connection, is really beneficial. So, Rakeem, you said something about storage space, and that was kind of on my agenda. We have not had much success in previous years on like obtaining a storage space, especially for like our equipment and, you know, just having a central location. People are always able to donate like conference rooms, but not somewhere just to store the stuff. And if anyone has, especially with all these like, you know, all these offices are closed right now, and there's obviously just like more space in New York City than ever before. If anyone has any connections or leads or thinks that they know someone who might be able to donate space even just for a few months, or that would be really awesome, because it would be really cool to have some central spaces where people could pick up their equipment and learn about it and have a bit more of a hands-on experience in the install, learning how to become an install leader. So,
how much space do you need?
I mean, it could be kind of anything really. Like, it doesn't necessarily. I think it's like it could just be a small storage space just for like antennas and J pipes and stuff, which, you know, could probably fit in like a, you know, 8x6 room or something like that. Or, you know, if something larger, we could maybe do more training and stuff like that. So it's we just don't really have anything right now, and people are like, I know my apartment is overflowing with, and actually I just got rid of a whole bunch, but it was overflowing with antennas and J pipes, and you know, so do you have any thoughts or like?
Oh, I'm just thinking, but I'll be thinking about it. So
okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm thinking like now is kind of a better time than ever, where there's potentially tons of space in New York for stuff like that, and unused space, and I think it would be really helpful. Like I was thinking too, like we've talked about like DIY installs, and it would be cool if we could just like box them up there, and then either like people could come by and pick it up, or we could like bring them to, you know, we're going to meet at Prospect Park or something, and like people can come by and pick them up or something to do DIY installs, which would be really awesome, not only just to help expand the network, but kind of give people more of in person, like just more of a hands-on experience connecting to the network. So I think a lot of people are super interested in it, and then they just sign up, and it gets easy to fall into like a, you know, customer service relationship, because that's all we've ever known. So, but yeah.
Do you have network redundancy, or is just one super node that feeds multiple mesh networks, or one network? Because you said something about Williamsburg connected to node 1 in Brooklyn. I don't know where node 1 is. Node 1 in Manhattan?
Yeah, node 1's in like the financial district, Chinatown border, in the former Verizon building. And we have 2 super nodes, so those are directly connected to fiber, and then we'll certain areas do have more redundancy than others. So that was a big project over the last year, was to kind of be a lot more intentional about the redundancy by installing hubs with 2 nodes, so an omnidirectional on the point-to-point, rather than previously we had done more point-to-points, which were cheaper, but, you know, kind of weakened the network as quickly as we expanded. And so like probably the best examples, I mean, like the East Village and Chinatown are good examples just because it is like really dense there, because that's where the network started. But also Prospect Lefferts Gardens, we have good little meshing, and then Greenpoint as well.
Yeah. So are you saying that in Williamsburg you can connect to the one in Chinatown or in the financial district, or That's just a large distance. Because I know you have to go over the bridge. If you can, then it's pretty robust. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear the first part of your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was asking is, are you saying that the network, if someone has a mesh network in Williamsburg, it can connect to a financial district node, or would it be degraded service?
If they have line of sight, it's some buildings do. Some buildings are connected to Supernode 1 from like South Williamsburg, but it's sometimes a stretch. I've been on installs where I have not gotten a connection after many hours of trying. So that's the line of sight tool. I mean, while it's not perfect, it's kind of a good starting point to get a rule of thumb on like whether or not where you would connect, because like in Williamsburg, some might connect to Greenpoint nodes, or like Bushwick and East Williamsburg, we have a pretty large density. So yeah, it just kind of depends on the situation, and it could depend on like if there's a building in front of you that is 10 stories and you're a 4-story building, like you might, in theory, like you may, if that building was not there, you would have had a connection, but yeah, it'll block your line of sight. So.
But you wouldn't have a collision if somehow your mesh network was connected to node 1 and there's no way for it to connect to node 2. If it's connected to 1, that's it. It can't connect to 1 and 2.
No, so it can reroute to, well, I mean, if it has line of sight to both theoretically node 1 and node 2, if the connection was deteriorated for some reason to node 1, it could reroute to node 2.
It would do
given that
automatically.
Yeah. So given that it's going to be an omnidirectional, because the point-to-point would just be So with the proper nodes that can.
Does the network support Tor endpoints?
Yes, I don't know too much about that, and if someone wants to chime in.
Let Rob go. Go ahead, Rob.
It can technically be done. I don't know that we would have to have a discussion about it, though.
Thanks, Logan.
Okay, thanks.
Tor endpoints.
So one thing we could do is searching a breakout room for if new people want to kind of, because we are starting to answer some of like fundamental questions about mesh networking. So we can do a breakout room, and I have like a presentation, and it'll hopefully answer a lot of those like questions that might first come up, although these have been pretty good questions for new ones. And then if you want to hang back, usually people just chat about what's happening. There's definitely, So if you want to join me in the breakout room, if you could raise your hand in the participants section. So yeah, okay, cool. And I will send you to a breakout room, and you might be alone for a minute as I'm sending people over, and then I will hop over. Okay. Okay. Sorry, that was like a little bit of a tedious process. Okay. All right.
I just want to, sorry, can I say something? Jolly asked in the chat about the meetup description. So I just want to say, I guess, sorry for the mix-up about the plans for today. Julie and I had a little bit of a miscommunication about me being able to present. So I appreciate the opportunity for the venue to share some of my research. I did submit my dissertation and included a bit of writing about NYC Mesh as one of my cases. And I'm really excited to share it with you all, but I'll just need a little bit more time to get a presentation together. So maybe in the next month or so. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you guys. So I'm sorry if you saw the description in the meetup and came here to see that, and now you're disappointed. I doubt that's the case, but I hope that you'll come back next month or so, and I'd love to share my work with you.
So you
I hope
you got a doctorate? He has a doctorate in networking or mesh network?
It's actually in media studies, but my research was about mesh networks. And this group was one of my cases. So I looked at a few cases around the world, and one of them was you all. As Jillian said, I was the organization anthropologist for a while. So.
Yeah.
This time, is your dissertation submitted and published, and can we access it?
It is, yeah. So it's submitted. You can find it in the ProQuest dissertation database. And I'd be happy to share, like a PDF of it. But that's part of the reason why I wanted to defer my presentation to you all, so that I could have a slightly more refined version to share when I'm presenting. But it's published in ProQuest. So if you're interested, feel free to go ahead and do the research. I'd also be happy to provide a copy in a few weeks.
Yeah, presentations are good and they're fine, but I love reading the dissertations.
Yeah, well, I'm working on a book proposal right now, so that means kind of editing and cleaning up the dissertation. The dissertation tends to be a little bit more rough, which was definitely the case for me. So I'm in the process of cleaning that up, and I'd be really thrilled actually to share with you all the slightly refined version of the dissertation later this summer.
Okay.
But I can't stop you from looking, so feel free to go look. It's in ProQuest, so if you want to go ahead and search for that, you can definitely find it.
Yeah. Just real quickly, what I've been doing with a mesh network and networking dissertations is that I have been scanning through them and then taking the concepts and throwing them into Obsidian for network thought, along with because I can't afford Rome research. So I use Obsidian, and I'm taking everybody's network dissertations and trying to get a mind map of those dissertations.
Great. I would love to see that if you're able to share it, or if you want to share any of the other dissertations that I've found quite a few, but there's always more research to be done. So if you want to post that link in Slack, or if you want to post some of the titles that you found, I would be super grateful to see any of your research.
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
Hey, Rob. Okay, I wasn't sure if you got.
Just saw your message. I can.
Okay. Sorry, I had to reassign myself as or relinquish my host powers. So we'll hop into the breakout room in a sec.
Okay. I think so. I think we're doing breakout rooms and stuff now.